Good morning, members, and welcome to the Social Work Services Committee of Thursday, 24th of March 2022 in Council Hall, English Street, Dumfries. This meeting may be live streamed, recorded and subsequently made available to the public for viewing purposes. I'd like to approve the use of virtual participation in the meeting. If you are participating in the meeting in the interests of smooth running of the committee, please indicate your intention to speak in the Teams chat function, and if you're going to leave the meeting for a period of time, please type leave so we can monitor attendance at the meeting. If we could now go to the sediment and apologies. Claire?
Okay, thank you, Chair. For the benefit of those members on Teams, we have 2 members present in the Council Hall, being the Chair and Vice Chair. I'm aware of 2 apologies this morning, being from Councillors Dempster and McClelland. There's a number of members currently not present, being Councillors Doogie Campbell, Charteris, Ferguson, Maitland, Sloan, Tate and Wood. All other members currently present on Teams.
Thanks, Claire. Do we have any declarations of interest from members? I'll give people a moment to indicate anything if they need to. Okay, I think that's a no. Minute of the previous meeting, 1st of February 2022. This is for approval.
Agreed.
Thank you. And I noticed that's Councillor Maitland just joined. Thank you. And then that takes us on to item 4, which is external scrutiny of social work services, where we've been asked to note the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the service's ability to report and note the outcome of the scrutiny activity which took place between November 19 and March 2022. I think we have Heather here to speak to this one in the first instance. Is there anything you want to add to the report before I open it up to members?
Thank you, Chair. Just a few comments just to remind members that this is a report that would normally have come to committee quite regularly in terms of making sure that we had that overview. However, with the pandemic, you'll see this is a delayed report. Therefore, the last report we brought was November 2019. And also you will see that actually there hasn't been a huge amount of activity, certainly in the initial part of the pandemic during 2020. We saw a significant drop in inspection activity, as you would expect, and that began to pick up again then late sort of like 20 into 2021. So we're still not running probably at the number that we would normally have, but they are beginning to pick up, and what's reflected here is the sort of the experience that we've had to date across children's services and adult care.
Thank you, Heather. Members, any questions on the details in this report? Councillor Maitland?
Thank you, Stephen. Heather, supported lodgings. The question that I've got really is that these services are purchased, I think, very largely, if not exclusively. And I suppose what I'm wondering is about where the contract monitoring takes place in all of this. Would we have expected the training to have been part and parcel of the contract, and therefore to have been undertaken anyway? So I'm just curious about how this connects up with the contract monitoring that ought to be happening.
Thanks, Jane. Heather, are you able to respond to that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Supported lodgings is one of our own services, Councillor Maitland. So in terms of what's reported here are the services that we run in terms of how we provide then the support to the providers. So we would be looking then at how we sort of like make sure that they're properly trained and supported, and that's all part of the package, as it were. So we would oversee that programme, and we would run that programme to some extent, and therefore, you know, we've tried to keep on top of that as much as we can. But again, there was some delays, obviously, with the pandemic and our ability to access people face to face and be able to get things set up online. So it's not contract monitored as such in the way that sort of services that are not run by the council would be. So the other commission services, because this is our own. as a regulated service, and therefore we would oversee this ourselves, and we would then support sort of the providers in terms of the supported lodgings.
Does that help, Jane, or do you want to come back?
Well, I'm still slightly confused. So do we not then buy, so to speak? I think there's a bit of a confusion in my mind, certainly, Chairman, about this as to what we could expect. I understand that we run the service overall, but do we not then contract with people and providers to provide the service? I'm sorry not to be absolutely clear on this, but I think it's quite important.
I think there's a bit of a competition to see who wants to respond to this, but Heather, do you want to come back on that?
I'll start, Chairman. Lillian might want to come in behind me. My understanding, and Lillian will correct me if I'm wrong here, but my understanding is that in terms of what we talk about providers here of supported lodgings, we are talking about individuals as opposed to an organisation. Which is where I think there's the difference in terms of what we would normally call contract monitoring with an organisation. This would be through case review, etc., and support of those providers. So in terms of people who will take in and have someone live within their accommodation, in terms of it being a supported lodging, is my understanding. But I'll let Lillian add to that if that's not quite.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Heather. Councillor Maitland, it is uniquely different from adult services. So that there is a fundamental difference. It's not just the accommodation, it's also the support element. So it is an in-house service as such, and certainly happy to provide you with more information if you require clarity. Thank you.
Thanks, Lillian. I mean, just on that point, I think there's definitely a finer point of information that might be useful to members just about how that particular thing works. I don't know, Jane, if that would be helpful to you, if we could maybe get a little bit of information in the time we have to digest it at least.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Just a point that I think has been raised by these reports, and yes, I think that would be helpful. The only other thing, if I could possibly be indulged, please, about the question was, do we simply report? I'm looking at the significant changes and requirements. Do we simply report back on requirements, Chairman? Yeah, because I would say that if we look at all the things that are badged up in the inspection tables there, we don't have information about them all, but maybe it's just the ones that are specific group requirements that we're responding to. Is that right?
I mean, as far as I understand, I don't think we necessarily decide what gets inspected at times, and so there might only be certain elements of the service that get inspected. But I'll pass over to Heather to maybe give you a better answer to that.
Yes, Chair, that's absolutely right. What we look at would be what the inspection's been about, what the focus of the inspection's been, and we take what you get here in terms of the external scrutiny report is, I suppose, in a sense, some of the summary of what progress we're making against all of the either requirements or recommendations. So if an inspection report has made a requirement, we'll include that. If it equally includes recommendations, those will be included as well. So where you see here, where it's about requirements, then those are the areas of improvement that were set by the inspectors themselves. And that does quite often determine in terms of which of the areas of the quality improvement indicators they've actually focused on at the time. But yeah, you would get everything that's in an inspection report would come through here for your oversight and scrutiny.
Does that help clarify, Jane?
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Councillor John Campbell.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. In the appendix, if you can maybe help us out in some of the tables where it says not assessed or not required, I'm kind of at a loss of why in some of the tables there's been no assessment from 2018, in particular the supported lodgings. And the second point I'd like to raise, if I may, is that the Hartland Road Children's House was in the news just recently, and looking at this particular assessment reports. The number of 2s are quite disappointing. I'm just wondering if we can have an update on that, please. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Campbell. So I mean, I think this goes back to the point in the last question, maybe about what gets assessed, but clearly over a number of years, maybe it does look like it's a gap, and I suppose nobody likes to see number 2s in a report. So I don't know if you can maybe pick that up as well, Heather.
Yes, if I address the first point, then Lillian will address the second. Again, and we have no control over what's actually assessed by the Care Inspectorate, so they will look at it and they will choose which of the improvement indicators to focus on, dependent on their past activity. So yeah, I mean, it is quite surprising that they haven't looked at all at the staffing on this. I mean, that would indicate to us that they're more concerned about some of the other areas, and actually certainly in terms of the supported lodgings, the staffing team is not the same as you would see in another service, because the people who provide the supported lodgings are not our staff per se. So again, this one's down to the specific makeup of that service, and when we give you the detail of what that looks like, that hopefully will become clearer. Because normally the Care Inspectorate would look right across and they would try to sort of make sure that they're looking at each of the indicators at least sort of over a period of time is how they would normally do it, and they would obviously focus on ones where they are concerned or where previously maybe they feel that they need to have more scrutiny. But I'll hand across to Lillian for the update on Hardthorn Road.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. I'm just going to check. I was hoping that Sheila Clingan may be able to join us. I'm not sure if Sheila's on the call. If not, then I'm happy to give you an update. I don't think Sheila's managed to make it. She's kind of involved in some other stuff this morning. So we clearly were disappointed when we received this feedback from Care Inspectorate. I do, certainly not a reason or an excuse, but it is a factor that these inspections all took place during the height of the pandemic, and particularly for our residential staff, things were extremely difficult, as you would appreciate, having managing young people in the unit with no school and other levels of activity that they would normally be part of. You know, the unit was at points, not all the time. A lot of the time it was really stable, and a lot of really positive feedback from the young people, but at points they really struggled with the lockdown. And I think with any family group there has been breakdown in relationships with parents and children. The same for the unit. There was some breakdown with the staff and the young people. So that reflected on it. We've done collectively quite a lot of work to try and address. We've done some focus groups with the young people to talk it through. We had quite a transient period of time for Hardthorn Road where we were having a number of young people accommodated, and we had to go over numbers as we were allowed to do during COVID. So the unit was extremely busy and quite a lot of change in the unit. It's generally a very settled unit, Hardthorn Road, but there was a lot of youngsters coming in and others moving on and moving out. So we're certainly well aware of it. We're working hard with the leadership team within the unit, and I would be confident as when we're re-inspected we'll get back to the grades that we were. We were a bit unclear, and we raised this with Care Inspectorate, that, you know, how good as the staff team went from 3 to 4, which we're positive about, and how that then reflected on the leadership. So there was a bit of some confusion feedback from Care Inspectorate, which we did challenge them around. However, they make their own assessment, they table their own views and their own grades, and we have submitted an action plan. They have been back, and they won't change the grades until they do another inspection, but they've certainly raised no other issues with us. So happy to come back on that if required. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Lillian. Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, John. And yeah, so I think the key thing there is really about what progress we've made since the inspection. Obviously, we don't like to see the 2s, but I think what you're saying, the assurance there is that we have, and in the report it does outline what's been done, what actions have been taken, and what I suppose we would expect to see those improvements reflected in the next inspection. So hopefully we can look forward to that in a more positive light, given a lot of the restrictions have been lifted since then as well. I don't see any other questions from members. So with that, if we turn to the recommendations, I'll be happy to note at 2.1, note at 2.2, and obviously we've considered the progress being made at 2.3, just with an action to provide a little bit of additional information to members about the supported lodging service for members' information.
Agreed.
Thank you. So that takes us on to item 5, which is 6-month assessment of social work service business plan performance. We've been asked to review the 6-month summary and scrutinise the exception reporting. We've got Gillian Greaveson here to speak to this. Gillian, is there anything you want to add just now before I pass over to members?
Thanks, Chair. No, nothing further to add. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from members? I'll just give it a wee minute for hands to appear. Vice Chair.
Could you give us clarity on item 3.12.4 on page 25, please? It's regarding Youth Justice Service and working with children, and there's a conflict between it and item 8. If you just clarify that, please, Gillian.
I think maybe for this particular one, if Alison Penman to come in this? Thanks, Alan. Alison, do you want to respond to Councillor McKee?
Yes, absolutely. And I suppose just to clarify that we continue to have a youth justice service. So this is a group of social work staff who are skilled and trained at a specialist level to work with children and their families where children are displaying offending behaviours. I can understand why it might seem to contrast with the paper in relation to the age of criminal responsibility, but I would just like to provide reassurance that it doesn't. So the Youth Justice team will continue to work with children and families in the way they always have, using both the signs of safety approach, but also using the specialist assessment tools and interventions that we have always done. So the age of criminal responsibility removes the labelling of children as criminals, but it doesn't prevent us doing the work that we need to do with them to reduce the likelihood of these behaviours becoming apparent at any point in the future.
That's
Thanks.
fine, thank you.
Thanks, Alison. Does that address the question there, Davy? Yep. Okay. Thank you. Any other members on this particular item? I would suggest that there's a few exception reports, and the ones that are there are probably no surprise. PDRs are often a regular feature in exception reporting for all services. However, that's not to say that makes it okay, but I think given the circumstances, it's no surprise that these are here, as well as days lost due to sickness, etc. So, but I don't see any other hands up, so presumably the report is sufficient in and of itself for members. So if we go to the recommendations, we would ask to review the 6-month summary and scrutinise the exception reporting. Are we happy to agree that? Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon, Councillor Maitland, I didn't see you there. On you go.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm having problems here. It seems to be terribly slow. Chairman, it's really about, you won't be surprised at all, it's the average number of days lost. And I just think we should have maybe a comment from the Chief Social Work Officer about this, about the level of pressure and about how we are tackling it. It is a problem.
Yes, of course, and appreciating that the reporting period here is to 30th of September, but clearly it's an ongoing issue. And Lillian, if you want to maybe speak to that, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Maitland. And it is really a concern for us. It's a concern in terms of our duty of care to staff. I have shared with members all the way through the response to the pandemic, the impact it was having on our staff and the huge demand that they were facing. They absolutely have worked above and beyond, and unfortunately for a number of them that is coming home now to roost in terms of a deterioration in their health. We have got a significant number of staff who are currently off as a consequence of work-related stress, and we are acutely aware that staff are suffering from exhaustion on some fronts. So we have got, there is a national health and wellbeing hub that offers a range of supports. We've got local supports in place that include a range of services that were staff are available to them. We obviously use our occupational health service as well to offer support, and staff can make self-referral to that. We're increasing the level of supervision for staff generally, but the problem comes around that then there's quite a burden fall on our managers, and I think for those of us, and some members have thankfully been involved in the open conversation with staff. It's absolutely a theme that runs through for everybody that's coming to those events, where they've talked about the huge demand for services over the last 2 years, and particularly for social work services. That demand has just grown. We are coming out of the respond to COVID, but we're certainly not anywhere near recovery, and I am concerned moving forward. I think one of the issues, Councillor Maitland, is that we continue to have an issue around recruitment and retention, which again I have spoken to members about, and that takes an impact for those staff that are left. The burden falls upon them. So we have got some worrying workloads at the moment. We do have an increased level of demand. I have come back to committee, and I will continue to work towards getting extra support, and I'm thankful for the support that's been provided, particularly for children and families. But we also have some challenges within the Health and Social Care Partnership to make sure that we've got adequate resource and support to deliver those services. These are national issues. We have staff absence across the council, but we know that that's the same for social work services across the whole of Scotland. There are quite a significant shortage of social workers. So we're doing everything we can locally. I can only give you assurance that we're aware and we're working towards whatever solution we can, but there are a range of factors that we have to take into consideration. Thank you.
I hope that helps, Councillor Maitland. I mean, I think it's no one could have predicted, you know, a few years ago that we'd have to go through a period of such a global impact as we have, and the effect that that's had on our staff and communities. And there's no avoiding the fact that it takes a very human toll on those trying to actually keep things running in some fashion or another, not just the people who are affected directly by illness and or those that they're connected with, but also providing those services. So the fact that, you know, I take it just as a glimmer of something positive that we can sit here in a committee and actually discuss this in a way that's like, well, we can look forward to addressing these challenges in the future. And while there are many, we've got a strong, resilient staff resource, but we have to also be careful about the fact that they're fragile human people as well, and they need a bit of TLC and rest and recuperation themselves just to be able to carry on. So it's been a very a time like no other, I think, for the services across not just social work but across the council. So I don't know if that's helpful to you, Councillor Maitland, but in terms of this report, does that allow you to be able to agree with the recommendations?
Chairman, it does indeed. It simply is indicative of the need to reduce need on social work and to keep our to keep the work going to provide preventative services. But I have no answer to say except to note the pressures that are on us, and to encourage staff and Lillian in the work that they've been doing.
Thanks, Councillor Maitland. With that, members happy to agree the report? Thank you.
Agreed.
That takes us on to item 6, which is the Duty of Candour annual report. Slightly lighter, this one. I don't know if you'd like to speak to that, Heather.
This is the annual report that comes in terms of the duty of candour each year to report certainly up to date. We've had no need to use these resources really. So I'm happy to take any comments that or questions that members might have. Thanks.
Thanks, Heather. Obviously, this is a duty that we have to report, but obviously, it's, as Heather said, there's not that much to report. But happy to take any questions from members. Nothing showing up in the Teams chat function. So with that, are we members happy just to note the report?
Noted.
Thank you. That takes us on to item 7, which is an update on the Singleton Park Care Home. Obviously, we've been kept abreast of this as much as possible since the difficult times that have been experienced. But obviously, the welfare of the service users, if you like, the residents, has always been paramount. So this helps us as a committee close the loop on that, if you like. But I'm happy to hand over to Lillian to speak to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And members, I felt it was important that we gave you an update just on the progress of the residents within Singleton Park Care Home. All the residents moved and were placed in other establishments just before Christmas. Rebecca is on the call, and Rebecca seen that move, and all the residents were moved round about the 21st of December. The unit itself then closed fully by the 10th of February, and we ceased to have any registration around the unit at that point. There are still some matters that are being dealt with, which will continue to be dealt with, but the important element for members of the Social Work Committee was that we no longer hold that responsibility, and that there was a positive destination for those residents that we required to be removed from Singleton Park, and consequently that element of the legal requirement for the local authority to run the unit has no longer been required. So that was all stood down 10th of February. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Lillian. Councillor Murray.
Thanks, Chair. A degree of concern about the well-being of the residents after, with the sort of all the disruption of having to be moved to a new residential setting. I just wondered whether we had any sort of feedback on how those residents have fared since they were moved to other homes.
Thanks, Elaine. Lillian.
Councillor Murray, we have tracked the residents. The majority have gone into other units within the region, and to date there is no significant issues been raised. It has been traumatic, and there has been support offered to some residents who found it more difficult than others, and that support has been offered to their families. But the overall feeling, the overwhelming feeling, is that the moves have gone as well as they could have, and there has been some few challenges which we've supported and worked through. Thank you.
Thanks, Elaine. Does that help address the question?
Yeah, that's reassurance to know that people hadn't suffered too greatly from all the disruption, and that they were being offered support where they found it was difficult.
Thank you. Any other questions from members? I think with that then... Oh, sorry, Councillor Ferguson.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Firstly, for apologies for being late, Chair. I think we just need to put in record the tremendous effort that was put into this to rectify what was a horrible situation as it arose, and thank the staff and the joint staff with the NHS for all their efforts to date on this. So I think we should put that on record.
Absolutely. I think that's completely appropriate, and I'm sure members would be in agreement with that. I don't see any other hands up, but with that being captured, are we happy to agree with the recommendations?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. That takes us on to item 8, which is an update on the implementation of the Age of Criminal Responsibility Act 2019 within Dumfries and Galloway. I think this is really here for us to note the progress, but I don't know if you want to have a quick word on this one. Is that over to you, Alison? Alison Penman's here to speak to this report.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so this is an update to the paper that we brought to you previously in October, just to report on progress in relation to our implementation planning, and I suppose to let you know that there have been no incidents which have caused us to need to respond under the provisions of the Act, but also in terms of forward planning. I would hope that the paper is probably self-explanatory and gives you the detail that you would be looking for.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Alison. Over to members for any questions. I can't see any in the room or on the Teams chat function. So with that, thanks very much for the report. And are we happy to note the recommendations?
Noted.
Thank you very much. That takes us on to item 9, which is really here for our information, and it's the minute of the Public Protection Committee meeting of the 7th of December. Are we happy to note the minutes? Oh, I beg it. I keep missing you, Councillor Maitland. Please don't take it personally. But please come in.
I don't, I promise you. Can I just ask, we've got these minutes here and to note, and I did note on page 65 that there seem to have been 3 letters written to a national organisation expressing Dumfries and Galloway's dissatisfaction at the level of support. Can I just ask, is this something that maybe we should look at in terms of the level of support being offered and the lack of response? Because I'm quite happy as an elected member to meet this and to find out a little bit more. Maybe Lillian, as Vice Chairman, knows a bit more about what's actually happening on the ground.
Yeah, I'll let Lillian answer that. Obviously, there's a number. It's a big partnership, and there's a lot of groups there. So I think sometimes there have to be actions taken that will reflect across those various partners. But Lillian, do you want to respond to Councillor Maitland?
Councillor Maitland, can I just check that you're talking about the 16 days of action, violence against women?
Sorry, no, it's the SEIE. A further letter was written to SEIE expressing Dumfries and Galloway's dissatisfaction at the level of support offered relative to what was agreed and expected for the 2 above significant case reviews.
Sorry, apologies, Councillor Maitland, I picked you up wrong there. So just to give you a bit of background, so the partnership had agreed that we would enter into an agreement with an organisation called SCIA, for them to provide us with support to train staff and work with them to undertake either an initial case review or a significant case review. Members will be aware that in the past, when we've had a significant case review, we have gone external, and that's hugely expensive, as well as sometimes you don't get the outcome in terms of learning that we would have wanted. So we entered into an agreement with them, and unfortunately, the 3 letters relate to myself writing to their chief executive about them not fulfilling that agreement, or indeed offering the support and training that was agreed as part of the contract. So that relates to a very specific issue, and we are still in negotiation with them at this moment in time with regards to the agreement that they have not fulfilled, and how we will have, through the Public Protection Partnership, the resource that was paid to them. The debate around this moment in time is how much will we get back effectively. Now, I'm not saying at all that it's a significant amount of resource, but it was a resource that was made available through the Chief Officer Group, and it's quite right and proper that that's accountable, but we did not receive the service from SCIA that we had requested and that they had agreed. So hopefully that gives some clarity. Thank you.
Councillor Maitland, does that help assist?
Yeah, it does. I understand. It's a contractual matter. It's a business matter. Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So with that, then, are we happy to note the minute?
Noted.
Okay, thank you. Well, I have no further business on the agenda, so it just remains to be for me to offer my thanks to all the support that I've received over the last 5 years from Chief Social Work Officer and our team, and all the administrative staff and the work that goes on behind, and not to mention the actual work that social work services staff carry out on behalf of our communities and vulnerable people in unprecedented times and for prolonged periods of time, putting themselves in front of the challenges that nobody would really wish for, which is above and beyond what they maybe thought they were getting into the job to do. But so thank you to everybody. I think it also marks a few occasions, obviously, as we're approaching the election. There's a lot of people here maybe for the last time, as it were, and maybe going on to other pastures new and taking different decisions. So, but I'd like to give this chance to the Vice Chair to say a few words, because I know he's maybe he's fed up with the council. He's stepping down. He's not wanting to carry on. But I'll hand over to yourself, Councillor McKee, because I know you've been very loyal to social work in this council for a period of time, and it'd be good to hear what you've got to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I got landed with social work in the first day in the council when my group decided that I should be on social work, and I've been there ever since. And I must say it's been a tremendous experience. There's some things I maybe wish I'd never heard, but they're going on in the background, and things are happening in the background, and we should know about them and how we address these issues. But my big comment would be to the staff, especially in the last 2 years, the amount of effort they've put in, and they're still putting in, and a tremendous job they're doing all the time. And sometimes it's difficult for us to recognise exactly what's going on. I sit on one or two other committees, and you're closer to what's going on at the street level or at the front door level, and how the staff cope with it, I just don't know. I can only say thank you very much for all that they've done, and especially more so over the last 2 years, and they're still doing even now. And I suppose that we should bring in the staff that volunteered. I think they were looking for work, and they volunteered to work with social work during the pandemic, and they should be thanked as well. And we shouldn't forget that they got involved. And I think a lot of them, from what I've heard, is that they learned a lot and didn't realise exactly what social work done. And that sometimes, sometimes you're better not to know maybe, but it's a tremendous achievement. They've done a great job, and I'd like to thank them all very much for that. And I've got a young lassie sitting here who's going to retire, and I'd like to thank her for all the work she's putting in as well. And thank you very much, Gillian, Lillian as well. No, you're still working. Thank goodness somebody's staying. Thanks very much, Chair.
No, and thank you, David. And I just see in the chat there, 27 years on social work somebody's put in there, so that's doesn't bear thinking about. But
can you identify them so as I can shoot them?
I think they'll be well known to you. But and also, yeah, thanks to Heather. I think it's you've provided a very commensurate service to this council, and I think you'll be missed, I'm sure. But you deserve to have a wee change, I'm sure. But so you'll be missed. But thanks to everybody. I think we should record that for the staff. I think if we can maybe do that as a committee, I'm sure nobody would be against that. So and there's a lot of messages of thanks coming in the chat. Just for the service, so I think we should record that as a committee. But that's it from me, and as I say, good luck and thanks to everyone, and thanks for your support, Lillian, over this piece. Okay, thank you. Bye for now.
Thanks, Chair.